All right, everybody, it is Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, we're going to talk about 2016 and 2020 and the quest for 2020 because so much is the same, right? So much is the same. And yet, so much is very, very different. You know, back in 2015, when Bernie Sanders started running for president, I remember the very first moment he stepped on a stage. He stepped on, there were like, 11 people in the audience, max. I mean, you had people bringing a bag lunch and they were probably playing Pokemon and stuff like that. They weren't even listening to him. But then you flash forward in short order. Hillary was so unpopular, such a bad candidate, and Bernie had such a strong message that he created something truly, truly special. Now, I will tell you this. Many people were hurt very, very, very badly when the Democratic Party rigged the primary against Bernie, stacked the deck for Hillary, and none of us wanted her. Some very, very well-to-do bougie people, or people that were about as shallow as a thimble, maybe wanted her. But the rest of America, the rest of humanity, wanted a real, legitimate progressive. And that was Bernie Sanders. So many people that had been asleep forever, that had not really partaken in the political process, came to life under Bernie, but then only to have their legs swept out from under them as the DNC did its damage. Now, we all know, at least progressives know, people that followed Bernie Sanders know, that Bernie Sanders ended up conceding, and he ended up doing what he had agreed to do in the very beginning, which was support the nominee. Now, before we get past that point, I want to make a couple very, very important things. I was devastated when it happened. You can go back a couple years and you can find videotape of me sobbing into the camera as it happened. Devastated. Put everything I had into trying to get Bernie that nomination. And when he conceded before the floor battle and tried to do what he could in his mind, rightly or wrongly, to prevent him from being tarnished as Ralph Nader and being blamed for eternity, which it's happening anyway, for Hillary's loss, he went ahead and tried to do something to keep as left a group together as possible, given the circumstances. Now, you can say he should have joined the Green Party, but all it takes is a few minutes of talking to Green Party people, and you realize they hate Bernie Sanders, regardless of what he did. Okay? Bernie made a political decision, one that has allowed him to run yet again, and has allowed him to create the environment for people such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and, of course, Ilhan Omar and the rest of the gang. I mean, Bernie Sanders has done more with less than anyone could imagine. Now, I say this because one of the big reasons why Real Progressives was in on that wasn't because we're joiners, because that's exactly the opposite of what we are. We don't do much joining of anything. We join when the topic is correct, when the people have taken the appropriate stand, when there's economic literacy at play, we join. We don't join economic illiteracy for the sake of unity. We never do it. We never will. We find economic illiteracy to be the number one killer of the American dream, bar none. It creates racists, it creates xenophobia, and ultimately creates poverty, and we ain't signing on to it, period, no matter what. However, Bernie Sanders, before he went and ran for office, before he ran for president, went ahead as his Senate position, and he was able to bring on Stephanie Kelton to be the chief economist for the Senate for the Democrats. Now, this is a huge deal for those of you who have followed modern monetary theory in any way, shape, or form. For those of you who have been paying attention to headlines and didn't know what this whole MMT thing was all about, Bernie Sanders gave life to a real, honest-to-God stare-down of classical economics versus what is real. The real cult, which is the orthodoxy that has lied to you about bonds and taxes funding programs, etc. Bernie Sanders brought along an economist whose entire career, entire existence is about bringing forth a New Deal and modern monetary theory. As many of you all know, there is no progressive agenda, period, other than lip service, other than another pipe dream, without a knowledge of how economics works and how it plays into freeing us up to win broad coalitions of people beyond either party line to create a truly caring economy for the 99%. That is why Bernie Sanders was so special to me and to real progressives. He was the one that positioned MMT to have the limelight for the first time ever. For those people shitting on Bernie and taking a doogie schnauzer on Bernie, you guys probably are not very savvy on economics. No offense. You probably don't much care about whether or not we cut spending, which ends up hurting the poor and they end up dying in the winter. You probably don't care about that. You probably don't care about the elderly losing their heating assistance because, after all, who cares about boring economics? You probably don't care much about Medicare for all because, after all, how are you going to pay for it? You probably don't even care about a Green New Deal because ultimately the Republicans are going to ask you, how are you going to pay for it? And guess what else too? So is Nancy Pelosi. So is all the rest of the corporate establishment, Wall Street Dems, the Dixiecrats, the boll weevils. They're all going to ask you, how are you going to pay for it? Every single one of them. But Bernie had the chutzpah to bring about the right economist, to bring forth student debt elimination, to bring forth the language and the economics backing a Green New Deal, to talk about a federal job guarantee. These are all machinations within the Bernie Sanders camp, even if other people aped his game. If you're okay with a factory second or a Johnny-come-lately, well, you can stop listening right now. But for those of you who are looking for someone who believes in their core about these programs and believes at their core about a just economy, not somebody who tallies around and says, well, we can tax here, we can do this, that. No. Someone who really, truly wants economic justice. That's your MMT community. That's our existence right there. Economic justice. And that goes for racial justice and immigrant justice, human justice. It goes for caring for the environment and housing and basic needs. So what happened between 2016 and now? Well, a lot of people are using magical language that sounds an awful lot like Bernie Sanders, but accept no substitutes because they don't have the economists backing them. They don't have the literacy to pull it off. They all have very small visions, very weak understanding of economics. And therefore, they can't possibly achieve almost anything because of the illiteracy that they bring to the table. Now, we watch, unfortunately, a whole faction of people fell off the bus because Bernie conceded. They think because he didn't chase after the rigging, that made him a bad guy. Now, when you're the only one and you don't have access to the mainstream media, and even your alternative media refuses to talk about your economist, refuses to talk about the programs that you're putting forward in the way in which your economist laid it out, when you don't even have alternative media, with the exception of real progressives, to back you up, because the rest of them are busy calling it a cult, even though they claim to support him, then you got to do something different, right? And so unfortunately, he lived to fight another day within the Democratic Party, because the third parties that are out there are too busy chasing anger and rage and chasing building their own, as opposed to chasing governing the nation. And that's a problem, because we got to govern today, even if we build for tomorrow. I'm not going to live long enough to wait for all these parties to get where they want to be, even if I support them. I still got to live in the now. And I won't support a candidate just because they're a third party if they're economically illiterate. If they're talking about greenbacks or greening the dollar, they're not getting my vote, period. You'll do more destruction, even without corporate influences, with economic illiteracy, than even the establishment would do. Because you'll forever put the left behind without a prayer of ever resuscitating it when you pull your economically illiterate nonsense. And that's a serious problem. You don't have to believe me, but trust me when I say this, to the core of my being, economic illiteracy hurts the left more than any other group out there. The right knows it. The right understands how economics works, unfortunately. I wish they didn't, but they do. And they know that you don't. And because you don't, what they do is they play on your fears of a household budget. They play on your fears of, oh yeah, another tax and spend liberal. And you don't have an answer for it. Why is that? Because you are a tax and spend liberal. Because you didn't learn MMT. And because you didn't learn MMT, you are ripe for every right-wing attack that they throw at you. You still have not learned how to beat the right wing at their own game. Calling Trump pansy and stuff like that may feel really good. But ultimately, it just digs them in deeper to defend this buffoon. So it's best that we stay on what the progressive agenda is, how to pay for it, and focus on how we can win in 2020. Now, what we've seen is a lot of the left that fell out of favor with Sanders shitting on him, taking a rabid dump on him because of some this or some that. It's always some little thing and then you fix that and then it's some other little thing and a whole bunch of little things, and damn it, they've got a case. And now, okay, it's okay to vote for some economically illiterate chump that was bagging groceries the week before that doesn't have a clue how to govern. But damn it, he's the right guy for the job. The right guy for the job. So for the last 4 years, Bernie hasn't stopped campaigning. His volunteers continue to grow. He's got over 1 million volunteers. And I think it's interesting as a movement. We've got to tackle election integrity, period. But you can't do that throwing popcorn from the sidelines. You can't do that eating berries in the woods and checking out. Doesn't work that way. It's a grow up Peter Pan, Count Chocula kind of moment. You got to stay in the fight. So election integrity is huge. Move it over here. The environment is huge. My God, Florida's sinking. We've got brush fires all over the country. We've got all kinds of green algae blooms all over the place. We've got all kinds of problems around the world because of pending climate change. It's occurring now as we speak. Experts have said, some have said we're way past the point of doing any kind of change. Some have said, hey, we can only mitigate the causes. And some have said, tuck your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. It's all over. So this election, if you choose to have hope that we're going to survive, is very important. It's not just important because of who, it's the issues that we raise. Now in 2016, The issues we wanted to talk about were never raised. Hillary was no champion of progressivism. So you only had Bernie's primary to really get the progressive message out there. Expanded Social Security, free college, ending the drug war, legalizing marijuana. You know? I mean, these are huge deals. Paid family and medical leave, universal child care. There are a lot of things out there that are really, really important. A federal job guarantee, banking regulations. It's all huge stuff. And all the candidates touch on different things here and there. But forgetting even candidate Sanders, the team he has amassed, in particular, of course, his economic team, has led a vanguard fight against the realm of economic illiteracy so powerful, so strong. Even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez felt completely up to the challenge of taking on the Federal Reserve Chair, Powell, over the Phillips curve and Nauru and the bullshit they used to keep people unemployed to stave off non-existent inflation. Hats off to the whole gang from Stephanie Kelton to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others who have sat there and said point blank, you didn't ask where we were getting the money for the military. You certainly didn't ask where we were getting the money for the tax cuts. So why in the world would you ask where we're getting the money for Medicare for all? Why in the world would you ask where we're getting the money for a Green New Deal or a job guarantee? Why would you ask how we're going to pay off student debt? The same way we paid for every bomb you used to blow up the rest of the world, with sovereign currency, sovereign debt, which means it's not debt at all like you and I know. So this is the value that Bernie Sanders brought between 2015, 2016, and now heading into 2020. None of the others did this. Not one of them. Every single one of them, including Tulsi, talks about debt and deficits. Taxes paying for shit. Yes, Bernie still uses Pigovian taxes. Yes, Bernie Sanders still uses vernacular that is for the common man, unfortunately. But he's got to get elected, for fuck's sake. I hate that you all don't know it enough that he can talk freely about it. But you don't. And most people don't have a fire up their ass to make people understand this important stuff. It's not driving enough people to talk to each other over dinner tables and to talk at the grocery store and to talk at work at the water cooler. This is the value that Sanders has brought beyond reimagining a New Deal. Besides bringing back FDR after all these years of the right trying to dismantle the social safety nets. No, the value Bernie has brought to the table is the economic team that shows the way that all others must follow. I love the fact that when we started this thing, there were just as many people following us about MMT as there were at Bernie Sanders' first rally. And since then, our mantra of taxes don't fund spending and getting people to understand the role of taxation and the role of sovereign currency issuing nation like the UK and Russia and China and Australia and Canada and the UK, if I didn't say that already. Those nations, Japan, is a perfect example of what you can do with a bold fiscal policy. And that's what Sanders is championing. There's no one else coming close to it. And ironically, I'm not sitting there humping Sanders. I'm sitting there humping the economics and the policy positions that are progressive strongholds Not libertarian bullshit, but progressive strongholds. Progressive strongholds that we've said we wanted, but could never get past the question of how you're going to pay for it. Well, if you've had ears to hear and eyes to see, you know the answer to that is when Congress appropriates spending. When Congress authorizes spending. Because Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress control of the power of the purse. Period. Not your tax dollars. We'll get to that in a minute. Congress. So I want you to think about this. There's a circuit that exists in the economic world. And that circuit starts with congressional spending. It births new dollars into existence. And when Congress chooses to tax some of it, it taxes it out of existence. With that simple formula I just gave you, if we have a balanced budget, there will be $0 in the economy. If we try to pay off the debt, we will be paying back every dollar that's in the economy. Because the debt is nothing more than every single untaxed U.S. dollar in existence. So what has Bernie Sanders done? He's brought forth an understanding of how monetary mechanics work in the real world, not in the fake world, but the real world since we left the Bretton Woods Accord in 1971. By leaving the gold standard, we have a sovereign, free-floating, non-convertible, meaning you can't convert it to gold, fiat currency, which means by decree. Now, we are not the only country with a sovereign, free-floating fiat currency. Canada has one. China has one. Japan has one. Russia has one. The UK has one. Australia has one. When are they all collapsing, guys? When is Japan with its 300% debt to GDP ratio collapsing? I'm waiting. You're killing me, Smalls. I'm waiting. When is it collapsing? If it's not collapsing, can we start putting you in the category of money crank? Can we start putting you in the category of money crank if it isn't collapsing? If you keep saying it, but instead of doing this, you do this. If that's what you're continuing to do, just know it's founded in bullshit. Now let's see if we can do this together. If Bernie Sanders puts forward a Green New Deal with a job guarantee, Medicare for all, free student loan, getting rid of student debt, free college, where's that money coming from? It isn't your hard-earned tax dollars. Do better. Think harder. Put it all together. That's right. It's the same thing that's spent on the military-industrial complex. We simply spend the money into existence because we can never run out of U.S. dollars because we are the creator of the U.S. dollar. And as long as there's unemployment and there's real resources available, we're not going to have inflation. But we've got to have the real resources there to handle the increased demand that money in people's pockets will create. The distribution of those dollars is very vital because much money is pooled at the top, dead and just being completely financed. It's a completely financialized existence. You want to tax income? These people don't have any income anymore. They have nothing but investment income, capital gains. Heck, they could probably write their salary at $50,000. Even if they said $100,000, it wouldn't matter. So once again, we're chasing after the little people to make them pay their fair share. For what? So it can be deleted? Because that's what happens to a federal tax. We pay more than enough tax right now to keep the economy where it needs to be. In fact, we could even reduce taxes more and do these things that we want to do. I wonder when alternative media will begin to put our needs first and start talking about this. I wonder when they will do the right thing and do exactly that. But Bernie Sanders' value to this thing has got way more to do with the groundwork he is laying for the long term. For the long term, he has changed the world for the better. He has invigorated people, even the haters, to believing they can do better and to have more and to lead a life of abundance as opposed to the shitty existence neoliberalism has given us all. To build a caring economy that allows us to take care of both our veterans and refugees coming into this country. To stop calling people illegal or alien and start considering them human beings. See, it's not a battle of who gets what, and hey, how come you don't take care of them, but you want to take care of these people? We can take care of both. That's the point. That is exactly the point. But neoliberalism wants to make you only care about Group A or Group B or Group C or racial Group A or racial Group B or gender Group A or gender Group B. Bernie Sanders is trying to literally lift all boats with a rising tide by an economic message for the 99%, which includes every single bullshit balkanized neoliberal class out there. Everyone benefits. And when everyone benefits, the hate goes way down. The jealousy goes way down. The what's in it for me doesn't matter because they're taken care of. So what has Bernie Sanders done? What is this 2020 election supposed to be about to me? It's supposed to be about taking the progressive agenda and making it happen. Not just talking about it. Not going out for a skinny latte at your local Starbucks and talking with your millennial friends on your iPad. Not going to the local VFW and hanging out and having a beer. Although you can do both. No, it's about bringing about the progressive agenda and making sure that everyone is taken care of in a caring, peace-filled, green energy society that takes care of the least of these and renders the rich irrelevant by leveraging fiscal policy to spend on the people. That's what 2020 should be about. I hope that's what it's about for you. Because if it's not, we're not going to get what we need. We're not going to get what we need. So I hope as we go into this that you start realizing whether you feel butthurt about Bernie endorsing the shill, whether you feel butthurt that he didn't sponsor your favorite bill, whether you feel butthurt that he didn't chase down the private corporation Democratic Party and try to burn them at the stake, whether you feel like he somehow or another let you down. Don't let each other down. Not me, us. Don't let us down. And not fight for what I just said. It's huge. And only Bernie has Stephanie Kelton. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a great night. Thanks.